Hey, Bill, we're live.
Hey, Sean.
You jazzed,
Sorry for being so energized.
you jazzed up on an afternoon to be here. Bill, I got some good news. We're joined as always by Katie, but hi, Katie.
Hi, Sean. You were going to skip my hello.
I was not going to skip your
You were
hello.
about
I
to skip
never
it.
skip the hello. But we also have a special guest today,
And that is?
Rick Mace.
Who's Rick Mace?
Oh, I'm glad you asked.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thanks for being here, Katie.
Yeah, no problem.
So Rick Mace is an executive partner at Siris Capital. He has more than 30 years of experience leading organizations through scale and change. In addition to his role at Siris, Rick is a member of the board of directors at Digital River, TNS, and Akisa. More importantly, maybe, I don't know. More importantly, Rick is the reason why I'm here. I couldn't force myself upon the listeners of this podcast, those poor souls, every week without Rick actually guiding my career and getting me to the point where I'm at. So Rick helped me start out early. The reason I wanted to bring him today is some of the advice he's given me along the way to have him share that. But also in his role as a CEO, especially growing, changing, scaling companies, he's got some pretty interesting takes on HR, compensation, and just generally one of the topic for today, which is our biggest strengths and weaknesses. Rick, welcome.
Thank you, Sean. Great to be here, and I appreciate the compliment.
So Rick, the one thing you said to me, and I don't even remember how many years ago this was now, I'm going to date myself more than I'd like to. You told me, and this was doing an interview process, and I think we get this question a lot. Anybody who's ever interviewed or has given an interview has heard of, well, what's your biggest weakness? And typically the question is, well, how do you respond to that? Well, my biggest weakness is I'm too much of a hard worker, right? I like working too much. And you told me, and I'll let you take it from here, but because this episode is not just about having a great answer to that, which this will help with. This episode is about really understanding your strengths and weaknesses and using that information to your advantage to better do your job. And so what you said to me was, what did you say to me, Rick?
I think I told you, Sean, that the list is always the same. When someone asks me what someone's strengths are, I always respond by saying it's the same. When they follow that with asking then, what are the areas of improvement, which is code for what are their weaknesses? And I say it's the same list. And there's a lot of experience that goes behind why I feel that way. I probably have also made another statement to you in the past in all of our conversations. And what I'll often tell people is that one of the things I've learned over the last 30 years about business is that almost nothing is binary. It's not black and white. It's not 0 and 1. Business is really all about situations, context, and it's more probability related in terms of its outcomes than it is binary. And people are even more so that way when they operate within a business because of all the differences they have. And a great example is, what I mean by that is, how many times have you heard the question, is the company going to hit its sales quota this year, for example? The macho answer to that is absolutely yes. And the truth is that there's always some probability that it may or may not happen. So you might be 80 to 90% probable if you did a good job forecasting, but the probability decreases if there's a new competitor in the market. It increases if you win a big deal early. Of course, you need the right people, the right compensation, and the right plans in place. So that's a complex situation. Answers always have to come within context, and answers about people, even more importantly, have to come back within context. A while ago, that's how I really started to see my organization and the teams of people that I managed. I began to wonder why the same person could excel at some tasks, and but not others. And they were a talented person. They didn't have split personalities. It wasn't the fact that they sometimes have good days and bad days. There was more of a pattern to it. And I began to realize that, we're all a package of skills and experience that perform, more or less effectively in different contexts and situations. So the bottom line was I began to conclude that a strength is only a strength in the right situation. And a strength can hinder your effectiveness in another situation. You know, being tall is useful in basketball, and it's not so helpful if you're a jockey, right? So the art of management, whether you're managing yourself or you're managing a team, is to understand the situational context of the tasks that have to be done or performed, and coach your people to apply their strengths in accordance with the right situation. So that's the basis of a simple piece of advice I gave you a few years back.
The basis of everybody's biggest strength is also the biggest weakness.
That's correct.
So you're talking about how you came to realize that, but what we probably have to assume before that is the way that you were speaking about it is from, you know, the management position or the recruiter position, you know, the interviewer position.
Mm-hmm.
If you're an individual taking a look at this, it obviously helps to be self-aware, right? You should know where you are strong and weak and where you can apply and push and pull those talents and when they're weaknesses to you. So where have you seen something like this leveraged? How have you seen people become aware of this as you're coaching and managing them through your role?
Well, you know, hey, you mentioned the first touch point we all have, right? And that's in reference interviews, number one. So that's real life. We're all asked to comment on strengths and weaknesses when that happens. And when you realize that they're all the same, you can actually give valuable advice to the person that is doing the interview. I'll move on to the advice you give to the person themselves. But if you're standing up to be a reference for someone, it's because you have positive, constructive thoughts about them in the first place, or you wouldn't have agreed to do the reference, which is why it's always difficult in a traditional sense to talk about what their weaknesses or vulnerabilities or areas of potential improvement may be, because you don't want to hinder their opportunity to get the position. But at the same time, you owe something valuable to the interviewer. And the valuable to me is exactly what we're on here talking about. And that is, they need to understand that if I see some characteristics of yours that I think enough about to call them strengths, well, in other situations, that may be the very thing that they have to manage in order to make you as successful in their organization as you can be. So, you know, if you're a strong speaker, in another circumstance, you may be a poor listener. You know, if you're a strong leader, sometimes you may not work well on a team under certain circumstances, unless you're leading it. You know, if you're highly intelligent, you might be overconfident. You know, if you're self-motivated, you might be self-centered. You know, if you're aggressive, you might be impatient at times. And if you're goal-oriented, some may see you as short-sighted. And so what's the practical advice there is, if you understood and you want this package of strengths, then what I'm telling you to do is, this person will be very effective and very productive if you also understand that you have to manage those strengths in situations where they may not yield themselves to be as productive as you might like. So, you know, another one, you know, you've all met people. I certainly am a person who's worked in large public corporations and in even pre-revenue startups in my life. But we've all met people that are successful in, say, the large public company, but couldn't find a way to succeed in the startup world, or, you know, the entrepreneur that you know, couldn't adjust to the large company that just acquired their company.
Yep.
And here's the point: the strengths didn't disappear when they changed companies. They were the same person, they had the same strengths. Rather, what changed was the situation and the context. So, yeah, a data-driven person's not as effective in the startup entrepreneurial world. A person that's driven by passion, dynamic change, is not as effective in a large public company. And look, everybody knows of probably the greatest example in at least our time of that, and it's a guy by the name of Stephen Jobs, right?
I knew that was coming.
Yep. Yeah, in 1976, his strengths were perfect for what Apple needed.
Yeah.
By 1985, Match's strengths and situation weren't so perfect. And by 1997, guess what?
Back to being useful.
You got it. So, you know, what changed was not the man. He grew during that period of time. But what really changed was situational perception of his strengths. And so those strengths in one time frame were strengths, and other times they were considered to be vulnerabilities or areas requiring improvement. So, shift around now to, the individual. How do you become aware of your strengths and aware of the need to manage them at all times, especially in those cases where they may not play as well. To me, there's just three things, and it's listening, it's introspection, and it's self-awareness. And I think the key to being able to sustain success or repeat success is knowing what you did the first time to make it happen. Otherwise, you're just lucky. So, if you want to repeat success, you have to understand what you did the first time and why things happen when they happen and what you did to make them happen. And that requires the disciplines of listening, introspection, and self-awareness. What I would say to anyone really looking to work on this personally is that, what they may not realize right away is that almost all of us know our strengths already. It doesn't take a whole lot of learning for you or I to figure out what our strengths are, or even a whole lot of listening, because we're receptive to hearing about that. We accept someone's observations or comments about what our strengths are. We know if we communicate well, we know if we structure tasks well. We know if we apply good judgment to set priorities. We know if we're comfortable leading. The learning comes from understanding when the strengths aren't appreciated as much as we wish they were. That's what we have to learn. So what I'm saying is we don't always know when a strength has become a perceived weakness, and that requires bravery, really. I was going to say willingness, but it's the guts to listen hard, the feedback, to believe your eyes and not your ears sometimes. What's working for me and what's not, especially when things didn't go as well as you had hoped or planned that they would. Sometimes, though, listening isn't even an option because we don't work for somebody who's comfortable giving us feedback, especially if it's critical feedback. And I'm afraid that's too often the case with executives or managers that haven't reached the necessary state of maturity. But I would say it's not a valid excuse for ignorance on our part, not if you want to grow. So if when things haven't gone well, you don't need to be told. This is really where introspection comes into it, right? When listening isn't the easy option of listening isn't available to us, right? So we really do have to build a skill, a self-driven skill that makes us aware, list the strengths that we believe we have, and I think we know what they are, and ask you how they played out in a situation when things didn't go as well. Don't start with what you might think is a mistake you made. Start with your strengths and say, could that be the reason? How did I manage my strength in that situation? How did I manage my strength in that context? How did people react to it? And I think you'll learn more about how to be effective by asking those questions than dwelling on what is obvious already.
So when Bill's always giving me those strange looks when we're recording this podcast, that's real-time feedback I should be paying attention to, that something's gone awry.
Yeah, and I would not blame Bill.
Thank you. See, I told you.
So no, I think what you're saying here, though, and I'd never really thought about it this way. Obviously, and it's fairly obvious when I say it, right? You need self-awareness to be able to do this. And to your point,
yes, you do.
If somebody's not offering you feedback, you need to ask that, or there are other ways.
For at least people that have some work experience, most people, if you gave them the task of write down what feedback would your boss give you, they know it. They can see it. They see, how come I didn't get assigned to this project, or I wasn't included on that team? And if you think about it, you realize there's a pattern of things you're not being tasked with, or that you did once or twice and then not asked to do again. That's not an accident. There's a reason for that. That is the feedback.
You got it. I couldn't agree more. And the introspection is what should allow you to see those patterns, right, Bill? And self-awareness, to me, is a step that builds the maturity and the good judgment that represents learning once you've seen those patterns, right? So you should be able to make better decisions about how you apply your strengths situationally through self-awareness. You are now aware of not your strength. That's the obvious part. You're aware now more about the situation and the context, and more mature about how to apply who you are and what your strengths are. So, some people call that filters, right? Or adjustments. But, I describe myself, I've learned over the years to describe myself as a patient person with a sense of urgency. So, why? Because I think patience is a strength that implies I'll listen, I'll learn, I'll include, and I'll communicate. But sense of urgency implies that I know that patience can be a weakness too. And when the time comes for action, I'll act, right? So leadership, I think, requires both strengths, and both are strengths. But by putting them in the same descriptive statement, I'm acknowledging that my strength of patience could be viewed as a weakness in certain circumstances or context. So I add the sense of urgency. But if I just told them I am nothing but urgent, that's a strength, but could be perceived as a weakness or impatience in another situation. So by just describing myself using two words in one simple statement, I kind of acknowledge that I see the balance that we're here talking about this afternoon.
At a more operational level, is there something to think about what you like to do and what you don't like to? Because that's actually probably at least a start of a tact there, right? If you like to do something, you're more likely to be good at it.
Yeah.
Right? At a more operational level too, right? As you're driving that self-awareness probably more early in your career.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Sean, you know and are close to my son. You're roughly the same age. And when he was little, he didn't want to play Little League baseball. And I really wanted him to play. And after I applied all of my persuasive talents and failed to change his mind, I did so because he made a statement to me that I've never forgotten. And that statement is, I told him that I didn't understand why he didn't want to have fun playing baseball. And he said, "Dad, what you don't understand is you can't have fun doing something you're not good at." Right? So to your point, Sean, generally the things we like to do because we know we're good at them. And they're fun, and we derive enjoyment from them. And we can make a decision to stop the list of things that we're good at now, and limit our activities to those things, or grow the list. And I think once you start understanding how to manage those strengths, or the things that make you happy, or the things that you're good at in different circumstances, you'll become better at those things, and you'll have even more fun, and your list will grow. So I do agree with your observation.
No doubt. It takes a ton of humility in that same sense, and it probably goes hand in hand with self-awareness, to be able to say, I'm strong in these areas. Those strengths might not be applied as well in other areas, or I have a lot of growing to do in additional areas. I need to start over. I need to learn new skills.
Yep.
It takes a lot more of self-awareness and humility in those areas. So no doubt you'll be a better person on the other side of that. But
so, you'll undeniably always hear me make these three statements over and over and over. Nothing's binary. Believe your eyes and not your ears. And there is no perfection, right? The three sort of undeniable arguments or observations that I made, and I remind myself of all the time. So, when it comes to people, whether it's you're being introspective or coaching someone, it sounds so obvious there is no perfection. But a lot of people are afraid to expose themselves as imperfect professionally. And it takes some courage to do it. And what I try to tell people is, look, there's only, all you are, if you're not perfection, is your sum package of experience, judgment, and integrity. That's what you are. And that's what you got to sell. And you have to know where you are in all of those. And hopefully integrity better be something you didn't have to learn, right? That's the attribute that you better have, you better preserve, and you better make evident all the time. But experience, that comes where you're exposed to more and more situational complexity. There's an old saying, you could have 25 years of experience or 1 year of experience 25 times. Right? And the difference is how much you learn from each of your successes and disappointments. So you got to get out of that comfort zone and understand that when you're out of it, your strengths are still your strengths. You just have to become better at applying them to the new circumstance. And then you'll grow, right? And if you're, that third part of it, experience, judgment, integrity, judgment is derived from that experience, right? And it's what lets me gain confidence in my ability to adjust my behavior, deploy my strengths, and react and respond to my situation more and more and more effectively as I grow. And that's the difference between 25 years of experience and 1 year of experience 25 times. You've got to put yourself out there, understand what you're trying to accomplish professionally in terms of developing your skill set and your experience, and then have the guts to put yourself through an introspection to improve your judgment, all right, and take advantage of that experience. So, as a manager, I think it's the same thing. You have to know, if to Bill's point earlier, if you recognize that one of the members of your team has recognizable strengths, you want to coach them on how to use those strengths in different circumstances. That's the best professional development that can occur, in my view, and it's the biggest contribution an experienced manager can make to somebody with a lot of potential. Shorten the path to becoming more effective with your strengths. And you have to be looking for times when you might take a chance as a manager, assign somebody something that's a little out of their comfort zone or even a little out of your own, but know that you're going to watch for something that, when things get a little rocky, and prepared to take the time to coach, the team or the person, to use their strengths a little bit differently, or understand at least what their strengths are in that context. So, if you're assigning somebody to an engineering task, they expect detail orientation. If you're assigning somebody to a creative task, they expect open-mindedness and discussion. And sometimes just reminding people of what the nature of the task is, the nature of the people on the team is, and the styles that work best, is all that a talented person that's got the right intentions needs to succeed.
So we've talked about you need to be self-aware. We've talked about how to do that, which is what we're covering, right? Think of what you do and what you don't like. Introspection. Rick, you were just giving good points there about manager feedback or manager guidance, manager mentoring. There's probably 360 reviews that can be helpful for something like this, or any of those type of reviews. I want to ask a circle of friends, and to the extent each of you are comfortable, you can participate in this as well. You each know me fairly well, except for you, Bill. You're on the outside. I'm just kidding.
I'm in the room.
I'm giving you a very strange look right now that I wish we had a camera. We have to get the camera in here. Tell me where I'm strong, and I'll tell you where I'm weak. Let's do this real time.
I feel like I already know the answer to that. We've talked about this before.
Go ahead.
You are very strong at being big, high level creative ideas and strategy. And
I'm terrible at details.
Yeah.
My wife will tell you that.
And you're not going to be the one to break a project out as to how it gets done. You'll say, here's the problem, and your team will say, here's how we're solving it.
There is a real life contrast that comes into play more often than I'd like to admit. My father-in-law, great guy, really actually like my father-in-law, but he was a risk manager at a very large organization. Oh. And when he was helping me years ago now assemble furniture for a baby's room. And he would want to lay out every single piece. He'd want to make sure all the pieces were there. He'd want to read through the directions. Meanwhile, I'm like getting the bolts in. Yeah.
You're like a storm.
I'll realize halfway that I don't have something.
John thinks that the instructions are just the manufacturer's suggested way of
suggestions, right?
It's a guide. You don't need to follow it. It helps you if you need it.
Meanwhile, the crib falls, but no, just kidding.
The crib hasn't fallen apart in 5 years.
Yeah, Sean, the same would apply. I've known you for a lot of years, and when you get excited about something, you really want to run with it. You get passionate, and when you do, you might leave a few people behind you because they may have questions, they may not understand, they may not be sold as much as you are, and you'll get out, a few paces ahead. Mm-hmm. And when you understand that. The idea is to, stop, turn back, share the passion, bring them up to your level, and get them just as excited at moving just as fast from that point on as you are. But that's understanding yourself, right? That's saying, I know this is true about myself, right? Yep. And so what I have to do is I have to go back and I have to teach myself to do this, recognize the signs of when I feel this way, and know that when I feel that way, I got to slow myself down, even though I don't want to.
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways to address it, though. Like, at a certain point, your weaknesses or the things you focus on and don't focus on are not set in stone, but they're harder to change. And that another way, besides making Sean a better,
more detailed
person, a more like a more task-oriented person, is to surround yourself.
That's what I was just gonna say.
With people that
teams,
complement you.
Yeah, and and after working with someone for a while, first you're upfront about hey guys, I'm never going to be the details guy, and we know that about you, but
listen, we know you barely hold on to your job, so we try to help you.
I mean, we know that that's not how you're gonna operate, and we fill that gap. Or like Rick just said, if you get excited about something and maybe you started at point A and now you're at point F and the rest of us are still at point A, I mean, as a manager, you're receptive to feedback, so we can raise our hand and be like, hey Sean, can you take a step back and fill us in here?
It's even worse. So what, that is accurate, right? That statement is accurate. I find it's even worse sometimes. I remember doing this exercise years ago, and I'm not trying to focus on me here. I'm actually trying to add some real live, what the strengths and weaknesses might look like. I'll turn this around on any of you in a minute. Just tell me. But
Katie,
I can tell you exactly what Katie's strengths are.
Let's hear it.
We'll jump in a minute. Let me close this one out. We did an exercise where I forget exactly how it started, but I think it started with describe an apple. And people that think opposite of me, that are much more linear in their thinking, are it's green, it can be red, it has seeds, it grows on a tree, and keep just following that path, right? It's a fruit.
I've done this with fish tanks. You look at a fish tank and I see the colorful fish and all of these things. You look at the fish tank, you are thinking about the pH of the water and
not quite, maybe. So it might be the same thing. So when I would start to describe an apple, I would start the same way. I'd be like, red delicious. And then I'd be like, Big Apple, New York, Subway, taxis, Uber. You just start making these leaps in your mind that in my mind makes sense when I connect them, but to a linear thinker, they do not make sense at all. They'll be lost. And so these two things come together it can be a perfect storm that way. If it's you need the tasks spelled out and you need very linear thinking, you're going to hate me.
Yeah.
You're going to hate me.
But I think the combination of thoughts and styles, let's just pick on the two of you, Sean and Katie. It's Katie sits there in her office and says, what would Sean do when he approached with this problem, or how would Sean think about this? And so she starts thinking in the more Sean-like way. And meanwhile, as you're, the whirling
Meanwhile, as I'm
dervish.
creating a tornado.
Exactly. Hurricane Sean comes into town. He's thinking hopefully in the back of his head, it's like, Katie is going to kill me if I don't think about the steps. And
all
so,
the time, I know
you don't actually go as far as Katie at organizing and outlining all the things that need to be done, but you start thinking in that direction, and the two of you get closer to each other's strengths.
So, Bill, I totally agree with what you said, and now a fourth phrase I'll introduce. Collectively, there's wisdom. The person who thinks that their style is the only style, or that they are have to be the smartest guy in the room all the time, is the fool in the room, right? So we all know our job professionally is to be right a lot more than wrong. Get it right, is the idea. Logic tells you, if you incorporate collegially the skills of the people that are around you and respect those skills and listen to them and adjust, you're going to be right more than if you just locked yourself in a room and made every decision on your own. So that's the art of making sure that you learn to complement your strengths, regardless of how strong you think they are, with the perspectives of others. Because if you stop and say, my job isn't to be the smartest one in the room, my job is to be right? And how statistically do I make that more probable? Listen, incorporate, include, be collegial in the workplace, because it's a way of blending my strengths with other people's strengths. And it takes an awareness of what yours are and when to stop and listen to somebody else, and makes it clear in your own mind. And that's really what we're talking about is, should Sean stop and listen to Katie, or consider even before she speaks because he knows her and respects her? Absolutely. That's a great aspect of, or attribute of, corporate culture, if that's taking place. Otherwise, you're left to believe that my skill set, my strengths, my intellect, my knowledge is a more total package than anyone else's. And so therefore, I'm more likely to make the right decision on my own. And that's a fool's game to play.
So I feel like everything is just boiling back down to self-awareness, like this whole conversation. Yeah. And
management, Katie. I guess, the funny way of sort of wrapping it up, in my view, a lot of these things we're talking about is, it's silly to ask the bull to behave in the china shop. You could remove the china and let the bull do its thing, or you could leave the china in place and let a cat in instead. But fortunately, with human beings, we have more options, right? You can coach a human, act with the force of a bull in some situations, and you can also coach a human to act with the agility of a cat in other situations. And the most effective managers and professionals know the situation, and they're willing to coach. And then effective employees are the ones that invite the coaching and learn from it. They want to be a bull when you need a bull, and they want to be a cat when you need a cat.
Yeah, and just to close out, you asked Katie, yours, we just hit on your biggest strength, right? Chopping it up, getting a process in place, making sure it gets done on time, high quality, right? It's your biggest strength. Rick just oddly hit on yours, Bill, I'd say, from my perspective, which is very diplomatic, very good listener, able to see any issue from different angles and actually open up your thinking that way, right? So if we're to go around, since you asked, and I'm just throwing it at Bill.
Well, so then like in both situations, then what would, and maybe you don't want to get into this, but how does that then translate? I mean, I think it's obvious then if my biggest strength is chopping things up and getting them done, in an orderly fashion, whatever. I think the flip side is easy for what that makes my biggest weakness. But in Bill's situation, if the opposite of your strength is your weakness, what?
So yours is ambiguity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If it's an ambiguous problem, you're going to want to think it through and start to get steps outlined.
Yep.
I could tell.
Might lose sight of the big picture.
I could tell Bill his, but Bill, you want to go there?
Come on, Bill.
It's the same thing. It's the if you're great at approaching a problem from different angles, and that can be a strength and a weakness at any given time. You can continue to revisit something.
Right.
It can be helpful, or you can feel like you're just circling the drain to revisit something.
Right. You can overanalyze.
Yep.
And also it's sometimes it's hard to make that like fast, hard decision. Almost,
You're thinking of it
Yeah.
from
you know,
all
like
different
Rick's
perspectives.
bull. You know, like bull in the china shop. It's like you come in and you need to shake things up.
Mhm.
That's not natural for me.
So I look forward to Bill firing me after this podcast, but B, if anybody needs
Wait,
references,
what-
here's my, everything's on tape.
Do I have to wait until the end of the podcast? I got
You can just
3
do it now.
witnesses. Well, actually, thousands of witnesses. But then I guess then I'll be president. You're fired, John.
Your new host of the podcast is Bill.
Ooh, that's a weakness.
It's gonna be, the energy will be a little bit lower.
You can stay, Sean.
A lot of smooth dulcet tones coming your way in. Some Miles Davis right after the break.
There we go.
Smooth jazz.
No, thank you both for being open to that. I thought that might be an interesting way to actually figure out
No, it is.
how to
I think
drive
it
this home, right? Because you can learn those other ways, but you have to have the context. Rick talked a lot about this from your manager, which implies there's a good relationship there, good understanding, which if your manager's not self-aware, your manager's not at
Yeah.
that point where they are, to the point that Rick made, open to offering constructive feedback, however you want to say it. I'm pausing because constructive feedback is probably the right term, but there's this notion that offering people feedback in anything but an annual review is not well received. And your annual review is because you soft pat it. It only comes once a year. You remember what they did great and whatever came last, right? Did that last project upset you or were you happy about it? But we should aim to praise and critique in more real time, but it all depends on how you position it.
Well, I think like ongoing in the course of doing something feedback is actually easier than annual review, sort of for the same reason I often tell people to go talk to somebody rather than send that angry email, because you can ramp it up or down, or you can make a bigger deal or smaller deal out of it if you're just saying it in passing while you're grabbing coffee.
I think also feedback is a much more comfortable notion once you get accustomed to following feedback with coaching, right? It turns out to be positive. So feedback can be construed by the listener as welcome or unwelcome, but coaching is almost always welcome. And when you follow the feedback with, let me tell you how you might be more effective in this circumstance. Let me tell you how this observation I've made could work to your benefit. If you want to work at it, you could always take feedback, which if objective, might be constructive, might not be viewed that way, but if objective, followed by coaching, is usually perceived and ends up as a very positive experience in exchange.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, this went a little further and got a little bit more personal than I expected it to today. Thank you, Rick, for coming on. Any last words of wisdom here?
No, hey, I've enjoyed it thoroughly. You guys, are fun to interact with a lot. So thank you.
Bill.
Thank you.
It's all Bill.
Thank everyone. It's going to be the Bill podcast.
We're renaming it and I'm taking over. It's
Bill
now
and
the Bill
coffee.
podcast.
That's every day.
Well, thanks for joining us, Rick. We really appreciate it. Really appreciate your insight and time.
More than welcome.
Thanks, Rick.
For coming on.
Welcome.
And Bill, thank you as always. And hey, thanks for the job. Katie, thanks for being here and being open to feedback as well. We'll be back soon. More of these to come. And thanks everybody for listening. Thank you, listeners.
Have a great day, everyone.